Thank you everyone for coming. I want to just first thank Rabbi Klatzko for coming all the way from Muncie. So thanks for everyone who came out. It's a big zchut. I first wanted to just thank the sponsors, the Mizrahi family. Jordan, he's not here tonight. He's in Philadelphia for his mother's 11th month yurtzeit, but he wanted to do something very special in her memory and to support the keilah, to support the Torah and the shul. So we thank Jordan. It's Lilu Nishmat, his mother, Bracha Tami Ben Naama. And for people who were here before, we have many shurim who go on like this, many through Chazaq, which of course I always mess up the numbers of how great Chazaq is. But if you haven't seen their recent campaign, I don't know, Rabbi, how much you raised? 2.3 million or something? Oh, he's behind the camera, he can't talk. But they raised a lot of money to support, help the public school kids in the community be transferred over to the yeshivas. Everyone who knows me in the recent couple weeks, I tell everyone that I want to stop being a lawyer and just work for Chazaq, and I say that with all sincerity, but it could just be a reflection of my life as a lawyer. But, so really thank you to Rabbi Klatzko. For all who doesn't know, my introduction to me is just a minuscule. Of course, everyone knows from Shabbat.com, from being a campus rep throughout the whole, I guess, the United States. I'm sure I go around to all the campuses. Really, I've learned the most from many weeks ago. I listened to this Inspiration to the Nation podcast, and I learned a lot about the Rav, and I was really floored to hear about all the amazing things that the Rav does. And so now whoever wants even more background could listen to that and see all the amazing things the Rav is doing. So thank you so much for taking your time to come here. And without further ado, thank you.
So much. Rabbi, want to hold this up?
Yeah, if you could just...
Okay, would you like this here? Okay. So this is good like that?
Yeah, anyway, you're popular.
Okay. Okay, good evening, everyone. Outside of the fact that I am struggling with my voice, you're in for a treat tonight. I have a lot of good stories for you. I would like to start off by saying thank you to Chazaq. What Chazaq is doing over here in Queens and in this community, there's no other community that has this, and I'm really sincere when I say this. I'm from Cleveland. I lived in Los Angeles. I live in Muncie. In none of those communities do we have something like this that just makes this shiurim and does it for the right reason, and it's all very inspired, and I get inspired. So whenever Robbie asks me to come, I can't say no. He's just so sincere and wants to inspire people, so that's amazing. I also want to remind people about Daily Giving. Daily Giving is an organization that gives both to Chazaq and to Shabbat.com and to many other incredibly important organizations. And really, when you think about it, if you haven't given yet, it's $1 a day. So at the very least, you made sure you gave tzedakah every day. That's the very least. And really, you end up giving to a lot of good causes. You've diversified your portfolio. So I think that it's such a wonderful opportunity. And you go to dailygiving.org. You can do it, and big nisim happen from giving tzedakah, and especially to Daily Giving that does it in such a amazing and sincere way. So I give it my full support, and it's just worth 2 minutes, and on your credit card you won't feel it. So that's what I think. I thank you also to the shul and then get your name again. Mordechai for introducing and setting this up. It's just very inspiring. So this year is supposed to be about Chanukah. It's supposed to be about anti-Semitism and life. The truth of the matter is that I realize that you have to be very current. So if you want to speak about something, you speak about something that's very current. And unfortunately, we've got to the place where anti-Semitism has become a current topic. That's really crazy. I didn't think that would happen in my lifetime. My teachers were Holocaust survivors. I came from Holocaust survivors when I was young. But I don't know, I thought we had a few more years in America before this Mishigas started over. And here we go with people being outspoken, with their hatred of Jews and Judaism, and it's just amazing that we are here speaking about anti-Semitism in such a overt way in the English year of 2022, soon to be 23. And I don't see any great savior in sight in terms of, people thought for a while Trump is going to come, and he allowed he gave his blessing to the council being put in Jerusalem, and he let out Rabashkin, and everyone thought, okay, this is the kind of person who we need, somebody from the outside. But we know at this point, and we've always known, that that's not reliable, and people who supported us one day turn against us the next day. Now, what does anti-Semitism have to do with Chanukah? So really everything. Obviously Antiochus was an anti-Semite. How do we know he's an anti-Semite? Because his hatred for the Jews did not end with the fact that they nationally wanted Israel back, but he made decrees against Shabbos. Like, what do you got against cholent? Well, you don't like gefilte fish if you're Ashki, right? You don't like what is your issue? What is your bris milah? Like, you don't even seize it. Like, why do you care about bris milah? And it turns out that Antiochus, right, Epiphanes IV, as he's known in history, was a madman, but also a tremendous anti-Semite. Now, I think it's important to understand the following, that while it's true that Antiochus and the Syrian Greeks were considered the bad guys in the story, but the truth of the matter is, the real bad guys, if I can use that term of the story, were the Jews. They were the Misyavnim. They were the Hellenists. And the Hellenists were the ones who got the Greeks involved. You see, originally the Greeks used to come to Israel, and they were, they spread their influence, but they didn't rule. We weren't a vassal of the Greeks. Alexander came, years before, and he didn't conquer Jerusalem. We named our kids Alexander in gratitude. And the Greeks, they hovered. They were around. They brought some of their culture. We didn't like it. It was non-Jewish culture. But what got them into Jerusalem? What got them into our business? And the answer is that in those days, there were no Jewish kings. At this point, the era of Jewish kings had ended. Now, it's true there were Jewish kings. King Herod later on became a Jewish king, but these were all puppet kings. Really, the person who was the strongest, most influential, most powerful Jew was the Kohen Gadol. The Kohen Gadol, the high priest, was the king. Now, you had two groups within the Jewish people. You had people called the Perushim, which would be today the Orthodox or religious Jews. We would have been called Perushim if we would have lived in those days, or like the Christians call them the Pharisees. But we were the Perushim. We were the people who would separate from things that were profane and connect to things that were holy. And then there were the Misyavnim. And the Misyavnim were these Hellenists. And the Hellenists believed that we can open our doors to Greek culture, to Greek sensibilities, to Greek values. We'll hold on to our Judaism, but it will be dressed in a Greek toga. We will have the Olympics, and we will have them in Jerusalem. We will build big amphitheaters. We will name our kids Greek names. And before you knew it, these Misyavnim, this other group of Jews, had a tremendous influence on all of Israel. And there was this civil war going on between the Misyavnim, the Greek Jews, and the Perushim, the Orthodox Jews. A civil war. And what was the great fight over? It was over who got to be the Kohen Gadol, who became the high priest, because the high priest was the one who was very powerful. And he wasn't just powerful, but he was very influential, and he was very regal. Now, picture this. The Misyavnim wanted a Hellenist to be the high priest. Now, let's just be honest. Like today, that would be the Gadol, let's say that one of the Gedolei Hador, or the Gadol Hador, and it would be like somebody like the Reform or Conservative movement saying, our guy should be the Gadol Hador, even though he's not Shomer Shabbos, or even though he's Shomer Shabbos, but he is really very secular in the way he thinks, and the way he acts, and the way he conducts his life. It's really horrific. And eventually, they realized the following. In order to be declared the high priest, you had to curry favor with the Greeks, because the Greeks were very powerful. And if you could go over to Antiochus and say, you know what, we'll shmir you, we'll pay you, and then you make us the high priest, Antiochus would be very open to appointing whoever paid him the most money. And so Antiochus, who had lost a war recently, who was pretty broke, who needed to gather funds, was approached by somebody who wanted to be the high priest. Now, if you have never heard Jewish history, you will be shocked at his name. But this was his name 2,000 years ago. His name was Jason. Does that sound like a 2022 name, Jason? That was actually his name. He was Jason High Priest. It's really crazy, but that was actually his name. And Jason paid Antiochus, and after a while, Jason became the high priest. Kohen Gadol Jason. It's like Christopher. Like, it's a ridiculous thing to think about, but that was his name. And what's interesting was that he had a brother who was even more devious than him, who was even more wicked. Now, by the way, how did Jason pay the Antiochus? Jason didn't have a lot of money. So Jason said, I'll go into the treasure house of the Beis HaMikdash, and I will give Antiochus, I will give you money from the Beis HaMikdash. So Antiochus, who would have never thought of doing that, like, you're going to go into the Jewish temple and give money to us. Are you sure your brothers and sisters are going to be happy with you? Jason says, don't worry about it, I got them. So he takes the money and he gives it to Antiochus. So his brother, whose name was Menelaus, says, hey, make me the high priest instead of Jason, and I'll give thee even more money. So Antiochus says, okay, you're the new high priest. So now Menelaus was the high priest. And after a while, Antiochus says, you know what? If they're willing to give me the money from the Beis HaMikdash, why do I need to ask their permission? I'll just go and take it myself. In comes the Greeks. They go into Beis HaMikdash. They just take all the money. They take all the money from the Beis HaMikdash. And he says, hey, once I'm there, I may as well put in an idol to Zeus. And all of a sudden, the Beis HaMikdash, that used to be a place of the greatest holiness, now is full of idols to Zeus, where the money's been plundered, and the Greeks are in control. Who invited them in? Jason and Menelaus. Jews invited the non-Jewish world to come and infiltrate and influence and impose their will. Unfortunately, we have a really, really tough history. And I don't mean tough in terms of the non-Jews hating on us. That's going to happen. Halacha, Esav, son of Yaakov. The non-Jew hates, that's how Hashem made the world. Hashem allowed us to stay separate by saying, you know what? You're Jewish, you're not Jewish. They're not going to like the fact that you said, don't kill, don't steal, don't commit adultery. That's not the way that they function. They're not going to like it. Hitler himself said, I hate the fact that Jews promote morality. I don't like that. I want to do what I want to do. Believe it or not, they haven't been our worst enemies. Our worst enemies, historically, have been Jews. Those Jewish people who leave Torah, who leave mitzvot, it's not enough that they wash their hands of Judaism, but they've got to go on television and then promote it to the world about how bad Jews are. They got to make movies about it. They've got to say, you know what? I'll give you the inside scoop. In Spain, there was a great person named the Ramban, Nachmanides, and he was called to debate in front of the king Judaism. Who does he debate? He debates a fellow by the name of Pablo Cristiani. Sounds like a very Christian name, right? No, he was Jewish. He was a converted Jew. Pablo Cristiani takes Ramban, parades him in front of the king and in front of all of Spain. Of course, the Ramban wins, but the fallout made the Ramban have to flee the country and eventually ended up in the Inquisition and the expulsion of the Jews. It cascaded from there. It was a Jewish person. Unfortunately, so much of history that we know that skewed ancient history comes from Josephus, who was a Jewish fellow who turned on his fellow Jews and became a Roman and became a Roman scribe. So we can't have an accurate vision of history. So many Jews left Judaism because of a man by the name of Baruch Spinoza, a philosopher, Baruch Spinoza from Holland, who wrote against Hashem, wrote against God, and decided to promote the idea that Torah is not min hashamayim. Considered, even in the secular world, one of the great philosophers. Karl Marx, also in the secular world, one of the great philosophers. Of course, he's the spiritual or intellectual father of communism. But people look up to him for his way of looking at the world. And Karl Marx was a Jew, but a self-hating Jew who looked at Jews as the very worst people. You know the great battle of Chanukah is, or the great lesson that we're supposed to be learning? It's not, oh no, we have issues with the Gentiles. That's not, we don't need Chanukah to tell us that. We can just walk down Queens, walk down the street, and we'll get screamed at. We don't need that. What scares us is the Jew who turns on the Jews. The Bernie Sanders of the world, who stands up and speaks against Jews, who has no issue speaking against the land of Israel, has no issue standing up and saying, let's stop allowing Israel to have arms, not understanding that it's very personal, because I imagine that many of you, including myself, have family that lives in Israel. I have 2 sons who lives in Israel. You don't take away arms from the country that's protecting my children and grandchildren. And yet, that's what anti-Semitism does. And the anti-Semitism that the world loves is the anti-Semitism of Jew versus Jew. Because the Jew is doing the dirty work for us. We don't even have to do it. The Jew is going to do it for us. What happens? What happened to us? How did we become so often our own worst enemy? We have to look in the mirror. You know, the Gemara in Chagiga speaks about the concept Imle ala mala mala shema or vada yipo mata mata. If we don't rise to the greatest heights, we very easily can fall to the greatest depths. You know, on Chanukah, we tell the story of Chana v'Shiva Baneh, Chana and her 7 sons, who wouldn't worship the idol that Antiochus wanted them to. And each one was killed in the most horrific way until Chana finally killed herself out of grief and anguish. And that spurred on the result, which were the Maccabees and Matisyahu Kohen Gadol. But there are Jews today who are still struggling to be Jewish, to keep Judaism, and they're not allowed because their family and their friends stop them. The hatred towards Jews by Jews. I had a young lady who was supposed to come on one of my trips to learn Torah. 14, 15 days of inspiration. Her mother didn't want her to go. You're going to get brainwashed. Kept telling her no, year after year. Finally this year she says, I'm going to go. The mother steals her passport and hides it. She's not going. She could have gone and learned Torah. I had a young lady who was my student in UCLA. She came with me to Israel. She was on fire. The neshama of this person was jumping. The parents forbade her from coming around my house, around anywhere where she could learn Torah. Do you like your Judaism? I love my Judaism. What do you mean? I'm a proud Jew. I just don't want my kids to be too proud. I don't want them to be too engaged in Judaism. We had a young man at the house. This is a very current story. I just said the story 2 weeks ago with the guy right there. Young man in the house whose parents got divorced, whose father left Judaism, their father was Jewish, left Yiddishkeit, marries somebody who's even more anti than him. And this little boy, Ephraim, not going to say his last name, Ephraim, is made to stay by his father. And his father forbids him from keeping kosher, forbids him from celebrating Shabbos or Yom Tov. And his new stepmother is even more anti. And he tries his best. When the divorce happened and he was forced to stay with his father, he made up his mind, I'm only eating kosher. And for months, this boy who was 8 years old only ate oranges and apples. Wouldn't eat anything else. Parents wouldn't give in. Finally, I was so hungry for months just eating fruit. So I tried to figure out what's okay, what's not okay. He decided that he's gonna, when his parents go out to eat, when his stepmother and his father go out to eat, he's gonna only order a salad. The little boy knows, that's what he knows, he'll eat a salad. The stepmother invites some of his friends together with him. Let's go to Taco Bell. Before he goes to Taco Bell, he calls up his birth mother, who is still from, and says, Mom, they're making me go to Taco Bell, but I'm going to make sure to only eat salad. And the mother says, you can't eat the salad either. They don't check the lettuce for bugs. Who knows what kind of oil they put on? And you can't just eat a salad on the knife that they cut. It's treif. It's treif. You can't just say, I'm going to eat salad. So the little boy is 12 years old at this time. This little boy, he decides he's not going to eat anything. The mother takes him to Taco Bell with the father. They said, okay, we know, you like it. You'll eat a salad, we understand, okay, we'll be accommodating. They order the salad, he doesn't touch it. And the mother says, I know what you're doing. You're not eating it because it's not kosher enough for you. You eat that salad or you're going to pay for it, young man. You eat that salad or you're going to be punished. And Ephraim sat there in Taco Bell, not touching the salad. He came home, and his mother said, you're grounded. Sit on the couch. Not a television in front of them, not a computer. Sit on the couch. And the next day, no, you're still grounded. Sit on the couch. This young man was forced to sit on the couch for a half a year. 6 months, all day, every day, sitting on the couch doing nothing because he wouldn't eat a salad at Taco Bell. The boy's a hero. He was by me 2 weeks ago. I wanted to point him out. I said, that's the guy over here, and everyone turned. He's the man. He's the same one who would hide a yarmulke in his briefcase or in his school locker so that he could put it on, but he couldn't wear it at home. And once in a while he would forget, so he'd put on the yarmulke. He'd have the yarmulke in school, but when he'd go home, he'd forget the yarmulke was still there, so they would beat him for wearing a yarmulke. How is it that us Jewish people, religious or secular, can have so much hatred towards Hashem, Torah, and mitzvot? How does that happen? What's become of us? Years ago, I received a random letter. Copied it over here. I thought it was interesting. I didn't know who this person was, but I wanted to read the letter to you. Read a little bit of the letter. It goes like this. This girl had called me up. Her name was Mila, and she lives in Winnipeg. She went to Israel for a little bit on a tour, and she wanted to stay and learn Torah, but her parents didn't let because they were anti. So she called me up. I said, I'd love to do something for you. Winnipeg. You know how cold it is in Winnipeg? The coldest city. They said the coldest average temperature in the world is in Winnipeg, in a major city. Not a lot of Jews in Winnipeg. Hi, Rabbi Klatzko. I wish I could have stayed in Israel, but again, I was faced with a huge problem. My parents were expecting me home and getting very angry. I came back to Winnipeg on September 2nd. It was very difficult to be here because there's no Jewish community. What can I say other than this challenge? Being back in Winnipeg has been really difficult in other ways too, especially with my parents, she writes me. It's very emotional and irrational with them. They criticize everything I do. They make jokes about Judaism. They make me feel bad. They try to make it hard. I do see them getting better with some things because they think it's just a phase. They see it's not a phase, but it's really stressful to be around them and hear the things they tell me. And then I start to question everything and I feel weak about my Judaism. They refuse to support me in anything related to Judaism. Just to give you some idea of my dilemma, I'm still dependent on my parents for everything. I live at home. They pay for university. As long as I'm here and doing well, this is a way for them to keep control over me. So for example, she writes, when I'm in the store, I'm looking to buy skirts to be a tzanua. She said, my mom will say, no way, let's go. I'm not buying you any skirts. Or she'll say things to me like, you don't understand what kind of life you're getting into, dabbling with Orthodox Judaism. We're not going to support you, and you can't survive without us. You won't be able to do anything on your own, etc. And she writes me this letter, a letter of a young lady who has zero support. And she writes, the next few weeks, I will try to keep Shabbat at home. I remember how hard it was emotionally when I once tried it, and just a few weeks ago I decided to make Friday night again to see if it would be any different now. It was just as stressful and as unpleasant as I remembered, hearing shouting, criticism, and what my parents had to say afterwards. And then she writes, what's the best way for me to avoid conflict? I don't know how I can stay strong and grow here in Winnipeg. I really need to be in an environment like Yerushalayim right now. And then she ends with these words, Chanukah is going to be quite sad here. A few girls and I have managed a little get together. It's a record for Winnipeg. 5 Jewish girls somewhat interested in Judaism in one room. But other than that, I'm on my own. Before I end, I want to wish you a happy Chanukah. Be well, Mila. And the Shama in Winnipeg is trying to keep Shabbos, trying to be a tzanua, and in her own home she's mocked and made fun of. So I told her, I said, Mila, I'll make you a deal. If you got 10 girls in the room who want to come to a Chanukah party, who want to be inspired, I'll fly out to Winnipeg and I'll be at your Chanukah party. 10 girls, the 10 people, I'll fly to Winnipeg. Little did I know there are no straight flights to Winnipeg. It's longer than Israel to get to Winnipeg. And this is in December. So she writes back, "Hi, Rabbi K. After our conversation last night, although I was still shocked about the offer, I was very excited. Having you come here would be the exact thing we need in order to lift our spirits and give us some encouragement that can last for a while. Although at first I was a little doubtful if I could pull together the girls for this, especially that it's around exam time, I got into full force last night, started emailing and calling, and as of right now, I have 9 confirmed, including myself, as well as 2 other girls that might invite their mothers to come. We will hit 15, God willing. So it's scheduled for Tuesday 11, and the planned time is 7 to 9 p.m. See you there. Happy Chanukah, Mila." I turn to my wife. I say, "Guess where I'm going for Chanukah? Winnipeg, Canada. I'm going to go and celebrate a party with Mila." I don't know who Mila is, but let's celebrate with Mila. So I found a flight, I don't remember, $1,600-1,700 just to get to Winnipeg. Fly out to Winnipeg with a few stops on the way. Get off the plane. It is so ridiculously cold that when you walk, the pavement, the sidewalk crackles with the ice that just covers everything. And you could feel your upper lip frosting over from the breath of your nostrils. And I'm thinking, what am I doing here? I come to a hotel. It was one of these hotels probably built in the 1920s with that old red maroon carpet that is so dirty and caked over with age. It just felt like something out of a film. And it was like an abandoned hotel. And I said, okay, I'm going to be here. I got here a few hours early. I said, okay, I'm going to settle in, light my menorah over here in the hotel room. And she calls me down. She says, okay, I'm going to get somebody to pick you up. She had a brother picked me up. We come to one of these shuls. Another shul looks like it was built in the 1920s, 1930s, with all of these plaques and bronze plaques all over the wall. All over the wall. People passed away in the and the early 1900s. And I'm sitting there. I come into the shul, and there are these 10, 15 girls sitting around me, and they're very quiet. And I'm not sure what to do. And there's a bag of potato chips. That was it. Maybe some soda. And I said, okay, I'm going to sing. Dreidel, dreidel, dreidel. And they're all like staring at me. Like, what are you doing? And I'm singing by myself. And I'm doing one Chanukah song after the next while they just stare at me. And then we go around the room and I tried my best to give them a little chizuk. And an hour later, they all thanked me, and I went back to the hotel, and the next day I flew back to Muncie, New York. And Mila writes a little letter. When I arrived back to New York, I found this letter. Hi, Rabbi Klatzko. I want to thank you so much for doing this for us, for coming all the way and making it possible. When I started planning this, trying to get people to come, I forgot how much I myself needed it. I thought about how much the girls who showed up could use it. I got great feedback once you left. They felt they learned something, like they were inspired. My only hope is that they realize this inspiration is true, and they're able to hold on to it and realize that they need Judaism in their lives. Truthfully, at first I didn't think I could do it. I'm still surprised that it happened. I didn't think it would happen, and even when I thought otherwise, I wondered, will it make any difference? I want to tell you, it definitely makes a difference. I was thinking last night that right now, for whatever reason, I have to go through what I'm going through, and on top of that, I have to do it in all places, like Winnipeg. But for the first time, I thought maybe that's just it. Maybe I'm here because there's something I can do. You were saying I was an inspiration, but the truth is that everyone was inspired by you, that you came out here just for us, that you took off the time to come here to this place called Winnipeg, that you came, that you were strong enough to come in the cold and in the snow. I can't explain how I personally felt that you came. It was great. I really needed it, especially now. Thank you. I hope you had a safe trip. You know how many of these neshamas are floating out there? Do you know how many people have no support? You know, it's hard to understand what the message of Chanukah is. And every rabbi on Torah Anytime tries to quantify, this is the message of Chanukah. This is it. And the truth is, of course, they're all right. There are many messages. Yomim Tovim are given with multiple layers and multiple levels. There's no question about that. We say in Al-Anisim, Giborim biad chaloshim, rabim biad ma'atim. The strong were given over to the hands of the weak. The many were given over into the hands of the few. That's miraculous, right? When a weak person beats up a bully, that's huge. When a few people are able to beat a huge Greek army, say 70,000 people, because historically speaking, there are about 70,000 Syrian Greeks that were fighting. That's amazing. But if you look at the Al-Anisim, it continues. Rabbi biad ma'atim, Tameim biad tahorim, the impure in the hands of the pure. Rishoim biad tzadikim, the wicked in the hands of the righteous. Right? And those who are against you were given over to the hands of those who learn Torah. So there are 5 categories over here. And the way I've always looked at it is that the last 3 are the answer to the first 2. How could it be? Rabin biad ma'atim. How could many fall into the hands of a few Maccabees? How could that be? How could the strong fall to the hands of the weak? The answer is because they were tameim biad tahorim. It wasn't just strong and weak. It was the impure. It was the false. It was the fake. And it fell into the hands of the pure, of the tzaddikim, the oskei sorasecha. The answer to how we keep a flame burning is that we keep it pure. You see, that's why these 2 miracles, the fact that we beat the Syrian Greeks and the fact that the menorah remained lit, are entangled. They're intertwined. They're not 2 separate miracles. The only way that the Jewish fire lives, survives, and thrives is not because we have an IDF. It's not because we've got the best Merkava tanks. It's not because we have the best drones and we have the Iron Dome. That's not it. That was never it. You could have great armies that fall like that. You could have nations in 6 days. The 6-day war, Hashem destroyed them. It's never about the caliber of the weapon or the genius of the technology. It's about Tameim biad tahirim, Rishoim biad tzadikim. If we want to keep Eretz Yisrael going, yeah, root for the IDF. There are brothers, there are sisters, there are people. But don't forget to root for those who are learning Torah. Don't forget to look up to the tzaddikim and those who are careful with their eyes and those who are careful with their speech and who love Hashem, who promote Shabbos and Eretz Yisrael, because ultimately you only have Rabim biad ma'atim if you have Rishoim biad tzaddikim. We need the tzaddikim, we need the tahirim, and that's what that little flame is. We could have gone and taken oil. There was plenty of oil. Oil exists. Why did we need to take the oil with the seal of the Kohen Gadol? Come on. The Beis HaMikdash was just used for Zeus. It was just used for a non-Jewish idol. So, baby steps, baby steps. Okay, we want to reconsecrate the Beis HaMikdash. We want to make it Kaddish again. Baby steps. Let's start with lighting the menorah with oil. Let's do it every day. Okay, it won't be the best oil. Why do we need the best? Let's just get it lit. Isn't that I would have said that, right? Get it lit, yalla. Suddenly we have to go from Zeus to the very best oil that exists? There should be a few steps in between. Not only that, but nationally speaking, wouldn't it give us tremendous pride as a Jewish people to see the menorah lit every day? If I were a rabbi then, maybe I would even make a cheshbon. I would say, you know what? Because we're just starting to light it again, we have a heter to use any oil. Stop, the oil is okay. We'll try to get the best oil. But to give the Jewish people back their pride, they should see menorah lit every day. Wouldn't that be what the layperson said? That's what I would have said. Instead, they said no. If we're going to bring Hashem and Torah back to Beis HaMikdash, we can't water it down, we can't take shortcuts, and we can't assimilate. We can't give up. We can't give in. We have to do it the best way that we know how. We're going to take the Pach Shemen that had the seal of the Kohen Gadol, and if it's going to last for one day, so be it. It lasts for one day. We can't help that. But we're not, the whole reason, the whole way that the Jewish people slipped and fell was because we cut corners, because we Hellenized ourselves. We're not going to cut corners anymore. We're going to do things right. And if you don't get the support of the parents, and if a mom makes you sit on a couch for 6 months, and if you have to keep a menorah going all the way there in Winnipeg and make a Chanukah to be inspired, we're going to do it right. We do it right because we don't know how to cut corners. We're not gonna. Today, we are a product of the Torah generation. There is so much Torah going on in the world today, we can barely appreciate it, but it's true. We like to think, oh boy, our poor generation, we're doing so badly, we're so distant. We're doing amazing. In certain ways, there's more Torah learned in America. There are more yeshivas open, more people learning in yeshiva in America today than there were after 1,000 years in Europe. There's more in America today than more than 1,000 years in Europe, and there's more people learning in a yeshiva in Israel than there are in America. Torah is spreading everywhere. We're in a regular Tuesday after the Tuesday evening, and here we have a crowd full of people listening to Torah. And when Torah anytime comes out, a Chazaq comes out, or a shul opens up, we are thirsty, lishma divrei Hashem. We want to hear the word of Hashem. Where does that come from? You know where it comes from? It comes from the tzaddikim, the chachamim after World War II, who came to America, and they insisted that the same Torah in Europe, Kollel, Yeshiva, Shiurim, Chavrusas, Daf Yomi, that can happen over here in America. In America, that was known as the Treifa Medina, the non-kosher Medina, the non-kosher country. And people laughed at Rabbi Kotler. People laughed at Ramosha Feinstein. What, you're gonna bring European Torah to America? America is different. Meir Shapiro, who started the Daf Yomi, and he started a yeshiva called Yeshivas Chachmei Lublin. He came to America, and he was trying to collect money for his yeshiva. Of course, before World War II, the Nazis ended up taking over the Yeshiva Chachmei Lublin. They burnt all the Svarim. The Rosh Yeshiva was nifter beforehand. But when he came in the 1930s, he came to collect for yeshiva. And they were so removed from the concept of a tzaddik, a gadol. They were so removed that when he went around saying, I'm going to collect him for yeshiva, he was laughed at. But you know what they heard about him? They heard that he had a beautiful voice. And they came over to him, these smart American guys in the 1930s. They said, Rav Shapiro, I'll tell you what. Instead of going around collecting for yeshiva, why don't you make a concert and you'll be the singer? And you'll raise money through ticket sales. Now, can you imagine someone going over a few years ago to Rabbi Vadi Yosef saying, okay, your Torah, well, we don't know about that, but you could be like Gad Elvaz, like grab that microphone and let's jam, and we'll sell tickets, and yeah, then you'll keep the money and give it to whatever you want. God, give it to your yeshiva. He was one of the Gedolim, and in America, all they understood was, and guess what? He did it. He actually did it. He made a concert with the one who started Daf Yomi. I have to say, I think he was lowering himself. That's his kavod, to sing in front of people as a concert for tickets. But he did anything to support his yeshiva. That was his love for Torah, his love for his bachur. And yet, what happened after the war? These big tzaddikim, they came and they said, you know what? We need real Torah here. We need chevrutot, we need shiurim. And they took the Torah of Europe and they planted it. And that's why here in Queens and in Brooklyn and in Florida and in Detroit and in Chicago and in Baltimore, that's why there are those yeshivas there. Because they took that Pach Shemen, they took that little bit of light and they said, you know what? We need the purest light. We won't change with the times. Although the other movements in Judaism, like Reform and Conservative, insist that we change our morals and our values with the times, we won't. You know why? Because Hashem is beyond time. Torah is beyond time. And while the world will drift away into oblivion and become more and more corrupt, Torah will remain pure, and it's only that light. And we're not going to say, oh, let's give everyone a boost. So you know what? Instead of davening in Hebrew, we'll daven in English, because we'll increase membership. And instead of having men and women separate, we'll have everyone sit together. Okay, we're watering it down, but it's for the greater good. Believe me, that was the cheshbon. The cheshbon of these movements was to increase membership. That would have been like us at the time of the Beis Hamikdash, using any kind of oil to light the menorah. Let's give everyone a boost. But no, we wouldn't have had menorah, we wouldn't have had Chanukah. It's a beautiful, beautiful idea. It's the purity. It's the Rabim Miad Ma'atim, the many in the hands of the few. The only way we survive is because it was Tameim Biat Tahirim. It's true we were few, but we were tahar. We were tzaddikim. We were oiskei sorasecha. I want to finish with this idea. You know, we have a bracha sometimes when it seems like the fire is going to dim. And we live in a sensational world where if there's a car crash, you could have a backup for 10 miles. It's called rubbernecking. Rubbernecking. The traffic jam is not going this way in the highway, it's going that way. But there's still 10 miles of traffic because everyone has to turn and look at the accident. It's not very considerate, but it does serve a purpose. If you happen to be in one of these slow highway traffic jams because of rubbernecking, you should think what everyone else is thinking. As you pass the car that is flipped and burnt out, you say, Baruch Hashem, that's not me. That's what they're thinking. They're just not using the words Baruch Hashem. They're just saying, oh wow, what an accent, not me. But we say, Baruch Hashem, it's not me. Baruch Hashem. But something did happen to us, and it was a tremendous lesson. And it actually ended up in a magazine called Mishpacha. And they printed it, and sometimes I tell over a story, and then somebody prints a story, and I think, oh, that's very nice, but I could say it over better. But I actually like the way they printed it. So I'm going to read to you a little bit of the story, then I'm going to tell you what went on behind the scenes. So here's the story. Less than a year ago, on November 2020, it's 2 years ago, our house burned down with a fire. There's actually the second fire we suffered in 15 years. Our house burned down twice. This one is the house that we had custom built to accommodate many guests. So we live in Muncie, and we had built this house with a very long dining room, and the dining room can take 80, 90, 100 people, and we'd have that amount of people almost every week in that house. We still, Baruch Hashem, had many, many people, and we tried to achnas sarchim. The fire was so hot and fast, it melted the silver menorah I received from my father-in-law when I became a chassan. One of the firefighters explained what that meant. Most of the house reached a heat of at least 1,100 degrees, and silver melts at 1,700 degrees. So it was an incredibly, incredibly hot fire. The menorah became our symbol. We comforted our kids by telling them that Baruch Hashem, we were safe, and it was only our possessions that were destroyed. Even the menorah, we said, was just a menorah. We still had the mitzvah of Chanukah. You can make a menorah out of tea lights if you must, and you'd still be doing the mitzvah. We thanked Hashem that our children were able to absorb the message. We had each other, and stuff is just stuff. Silver menorah, but I could use tea lights. It counts. But we were homeless. We lived in one place for 2 weeks. It wasn't feasible long term. A friend of mine who lives in Williamsburg had a summer home in Muncie, and he offered us that house to move into. It was a little bit bigger, but it wasn't our home. And we missed the comforts of having our own place in our mitzvah, achnas sarchim. Then we discovered that our insurance didn't want to pay for the fire. They said that had they known that we had so many people on the premises during our Shabbosim, they would have given us a different policy. And in the midst of all this, I contracted COVID. I got COVID, and I ended up in heart surgery from COVID. In the middle of the fire, in the middle of being homeless, I had 4-hour heart surgery where my life was on the line because of COVID. For the first time in my life, I was really down. I didn't know how we'd move on from the fire and rebuild what we lost. I didn't know where we'd live and how we'd get our mitzvah of achnas sarchim back. My wonderful children wanted to be mesameach me. They decided they would all come Shabbos Chanukah, which was just about a month after the fire. We weren't in our regular house, of course, and this one wasn't big enough to accommodate everyone, including my married children. But everyone decided to come anyways. It was the first night of Chanukah. We had bought little tin menorahs. That's all. We didn't have menorahs left, so we bought those little, tin ones, little colored candles. We found them in a Judaica store. I couldn't help but remember the beautiful silver menorah I'd lit all these years. It was a very large menorah. I looked around at my kids and grandkids, and even my son in Israel stayed up late to dial in at the time of lighting so he could participate in our family gathering. All the kids came from everywhere with their kids. At least we were all here, I thought, and I was grateful. Just as I was about to make the bracha, my youngest son tapped me on the shoulder. I turned to him and noticed a gleam in his eye and the smile and glow on all of the children's faces. I turned around, and our youngest son was holding a box. nice big box. And I said, what's this box? They said, Tati, open it up. And I opened it up, and all of the kids had chipped in to buy me a chasam menorah. And they wrote the most beautiful, beautiful note. And of course, I stood there crying. It wasn't the menorah. It was the fact that we were still around, that we were still trying to do our mitzvahs, and we were united, and they were trying to, rebuild from the ashes. And one of the children said, you spread light to so many people, we wanted to spread some light to you. And I wrote, I was speechless. Usually I give speeches, but this time I had no speeches to give. There's a mitzvah in the Beis HaMikdash, Eish Tamid, Tukad al Mizbeach lo sichbeh. There should be an everlasting fire that burns on the Mizbeach, should never go out. There's a symbolism here. It's nice when we have Ner Ishu Beso. It's nice when everyone gets to light menorahs, and when you've got, Baruch Hashem, a lot of children, and each one on night number 8. So you've got 8, and with this menorah and 8 and that menorah, there's 60, 70 candles, and it's bright and it's beautiful, and you could see it from the window, and it's so much nachas. But really, the mitzvah is one candle. That's all you need, is one candle in the house. One person, one candle, one light. And there's a reason that's the mitzvah. Because we need at least that one pure light to exist and to thrive. I'm sorry that Jewish history has such an awful history of Jewish anti-Semitism. It makes me sad. Very often it comes from ignorance. I don't think it's spite. But I know the way to fight, the way to survive, is not to give in. It's not to say, yeah, you're right, but. It's to be like the Maccabees. Mila Hashem Elai. Whoever is with Hashem, come to me. You know who rallied everyone around? It was Matisyahu Kohen Gadol. Yes, the same Kohen Gadol who has to put his seal on that oil. That's the same Kohen Gadol that rallies the troops, that says Mila Hashem Eloi. You know why they fought? Because in a city called Modi'in, some Jews, in order to pacify the Greeks, some Hellenists, agreed to sacrifice a pig to Zeus in Modi'in. And Yehuda Maccabee and his brothers went, and instead of allowing this travesty, this Chillul Hashem to happen, they went and they killed that person. You're gonna sacrifice? You can do Avodah Zarah in Eretz Yisrael in front of everyone? A pig to Zeus? We don't think so. We will fight, and if we have to hide in the desert, we have to hide in the mountains, we'll do so. But Mila Hashem Eloi, our oil will not be tainted. Our oil has the ability to last through a Holocaust, through an Inquisition, through the Cossacks, through the Crusades. Our oil will light through assimilation. In Winnipeg, it will last everywhere because we keep it pure. I want to give you Isha Bracha, that the Torah and the beliefs that you hold to be true, you should hold on to them very strong and understand we don't give up, not in tzniut, not in hashkafot. The moment we feel we're giving in is the moment our oil loses its seal. It's the moment we no longer have Chanukah, we don't have Chanukah, because we've given up. The littlest amount opens the tidal wave. It's a crack in the dam, and the water begins to flow through, and the town gets flooded, and the people get killed. When we have a crack in the dam of Yiddishkeit, When we give in, our light becomes extinguished, our oil becomes tainted, and our Judaism cannot last, not in the way that Hashem intended. Thank you very much.